Greetings everyone, St. Paul here. This is going to be my first original video about Thomas the Tank Engine. Now this is going to be specifically about roster listings. Now roster listing is designating certain jobs in certain areas for people who are assigned to them. A good example is Gordon pulling the express and Percy taking the mail train. So for this project I want to see for myself how would I change the roster if I was the Fat Controller, and which engines would be designated to which places on the island of Sodor, as well as which job are they specifically going to be doing. I did put a few rules on myself though. First, I'll be focusing on the model era Thomas, which is seasons 1 through 12, though I won't be using every model engine character, as most of them are just one-offs and others just don't really fit in for the island of Sodor. Best example is Hank, the Pennsylvania Railroad K4, just doesn't work on the island because of the loading gauge. And another example is Billy, another Thomas clone knockoff. Just wasn't going to be in this. Sadly, no Railway series characters from the books. Like, some of them would be perfect, like Bear would be perfect in this, but we're just going to go with the models. Now, there will be a handful of CGI characters, no more than a handful, as I really do like their designs and they actually function within the railway itself. Also, we're going to be focusing on only railway characters, so we're not going to be adding the extras like Trevor the Traction Engine or Terrence or Cranky, because they're already established in specific areas or they are able to go practically anywhere across the island. This is only going to be focusing on trains, with only one major exception. Now for the map of Sodor, I've decided to use the 2021 Island of Sodor map created by Unlucky Tug. This map is more in line with the TV show rather than the railway books, but I do think it is the best map for this specific task, and it's not as convoluted as other maps are. And if you agree with my decisions, great. If not, leave a comment down below if you have a better roster list for the Northwestern Railway. Remember, this is just my opinion, and it's all for fun. There's no real deep dive into this with any of the lore or the characters. This is just surface level brainstorming ideas. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe for more, and remember to hit that notification bell. With that in mind, let's start at Knapford Station. Knapford Station is the first station on the main line in the television series. It's also the headquarters for the Northwestern Railway, as Sir Topham Hatt's office is attached to it. So we're going to use this as the starting point for the main fleet of engines who will be leaving from Knapford to head to Vickerstown. And most of the engines that will be stationed here will be living at the sheds at Knapford. So most of the main fleet would be stationed at Knapford sheds. But there is some inconsistency between Tidmouth, which was the original series from the books, Terminus Station, and we do have some inconsistencies with the sheds between seasons 1 and 2. So with that in mind, we're going to say that both Knapford and Tidmouth have large roundhouse style sheds with turntables. And the sheds that we see in Thomas Comes to Breakfast and Percy and the Coal, I would say are more sheds for guest engines or maintenance sheds for trains to go for light maintenance, so they're out of the way. You'll see why in a minute why I decided to do this, but to start off with a bit of controversy, the first engine of the main line on the western side of the island will be Boko. I know, Boko is very much tied to the Brendan branch as well as with Edward, but I feel like he needs to be a mainline engine. I would have as a mixed traffic engine. They carry most trains between the stations with slow goods or local trains, very versatile in his work. The next engine would be Gordon, and of course he'll be pulling the express out of Knapford Station as he travels down the main line all the way to Vickerstown. No big change there. Next will be Henry the Green Engine, another no-brainer as he's the primary goods engine for the Northwestern Railway. Strong, capable, but occasionally can be used for passenger work if needed. Another bit of a controversial take will be Percy. Percy, the small engine, has always been tied to Thomas and his branch line, and originally I thought of keeping him there, but there was some kind of conflicting interest. One thing, if he pulls the main mail train, he would probably need to be stationed on the main line itself to maintain the strict scheduling that comes with it. Also, he's perfect as a station pilot, and if necessary can be called off to other parts of the island if the need arises. Now, the last engine that's going to be stationed at Knapford is our first CGI character, and that will be Philip, the box cob diesel. It is hard to say, as some people think that he's rather annoying, others say that he's just youthful and inexperienced. For myself, I think he was a little annoying at the beginning, but he does fit well as the newest member of the railway. He's a kind person, but he's small enough to handle much of the station pilot work to assemble trains for the other bigger engines. And he works well with Percy, though the show really showed him off with Toby. Both Percy and Philip can easily travel between Knapford and Tidmouth sheds to do the shunting duties there if the need arises. Looking back at it, the Northwestern Railway almost has a green as their primary color rather than the blue, as 4 out of the 5 engines here are green. Moving north, we are at Tidmouth, and this is where we're going to divide up between the branch lines here. First, we're going to start off with the Little Western, or Duck's branch line. Now, his branch line runs the west coast of the island of Sodor all the way up to Kildane, where again it branches off into other branch lines, but it doesn't end there. It goes all the way up to Kildane Castle, where there seems to be a loop back around. And, of course, we're going to have Duck on this branch line, as well as Oliver and his brake van Toad. I would also include Donald and Douglas, as they would also be placed on the branch line, giving it quick ease to call to duties along the main line, as they are great mixed traffic engines. All 4 of them will be staying at Tidmouth sheds, as it is the terminus station for their line. Not to mention it would be the easiest to pick up goods when they're ready at the station from the main line. We can also have it as Duck and Oliver can take turns doing the shunting duties at Tidmouth Station while the other is running passenger or freight duties up the line. Now when we go back to Kildane, we have the 2 other branch lines that connect to Duck's branch line, Toby and Arthur's branch line. And there's no real need to change, as Arthur does the fishing trains from the northern part of the island all the way down to Tidmouth, and Toby with his branch line from Arlesdale End all the way to Kildane just fits perfectly, so they don't need any more changes. And that's mostly because this northern part of the island is sparsely populated, with only a few small fishing villages and local farms that their lines are connected to. So Kildane would probably be the main station for the branch lines, and they all connect down to Tidmouth to the main line. Now, returning back to Tidmouth, we're going to start down Thomas's branch line. Starting from Tidmouth, we go down to Knapford to the junction station at Elsbridge, heading off to the heartland of Sodor. For his branch line, of course, we have Thomas. Then I selected Daisy and Emily to be on his branch line. Now, Daisy was brought in to fill in for Thomas when he had his accident with the station master's house, so I figured she would stay there to run like passenger services. Emily was the trickiest one to place because she's supposed to be an older steam engine, Sterling single. Her class had reasonable speed of topping around 60 miles an hour, which is not bad, but on the main line, where Gordon can go up to 100 miles an hour, quite a bit of a gap for her to take on. But then I had a realization that would be perfect for her. She would maintain the loop line. As we know from James and the Express, Gordon was switched on the loop line instead of the main line. So if we have Emily running her passenger services and light goods throughout the loop line, Thomas and Daisy can maintain their work from Knapford all the way up to Farquhar and back again. Now we have the other 3 members here of Mavis and Bill and Ben. Mavis is a privately owned diesel, but I would say I would have a contract with the quarry company allowing her to take some stone trains down to Knapford Harbor to be dropped off and help with any other goods that may be needed along the line. As for Bill and Ben, after the destruction of the Sodor clay mines, I would say they would probably be bought by the expanding quarry company, and they stay in the quarry, shunting trucks and getting them loaded and sorted for Mavis to take them down to the harbor. The rest of the mining network in the center of Sodor, near the town of Ulfstead, mainly has the gold mine, which is now a tourist attraction, but the main industry would be the coal mines, which is shown to be the only coal mine on the island. There could be an argument if Great Waterton was rebuilt and more people were coming back to it, they could open up the old mines in that area to get some coal. But that's a bit of a stretch, and we don't really see it in the rest of the model series. I would say that Thomas and Toby would do the coal services, and probably Percy as well, taking the coal and delivering them down their branch lines or along the main line. As we see, Toby's branch line connects with Thomas's branch line, so Toby can take the coal down his branch line and deliver it at Callan, which can be distributed along the rest of Duck's branch line and up to Arthur's branch line. And then Percy would take the coal and drop it off at Knapford and probably attach it to the slow goods trains so coal can be delivered at other parts of the island. Now let us move on and travel from Thomas's branch to Edward's branch line. Now for Edward's branch line, or as it's more commonly known as the Brendam branch, it has been something I've been trying to comprehend of its importance. One is that the branch is not part of the main line, but it supports one of the largest ports on the island. There's probably a lot of good lore that comes into it from the Island of Sodor book that needs to be read up on for myself. But I think the biggest thing that gets me when I look at the map is that it travels from Brendam all the way up to Wellsworth, but it doesn't make any connection to go around Gordon's Hill. But also, it only seems that the train, when it returns to Wellsworth, has to be turned around, or they have to switch the engine from one end to the other so it can travel east towards Marin. But this is more of a personal gripe and not really a lore issue. So from my understanding is from Knapford Harbor is the primary harbor where the larger ships come in that we see in season 2 and 3 with Percy and Duck, seeing how large Brendam Docks is moving into season 5. I will say that Brendam Docks gets a lot more traffic with goods rather than larger passenger vessels. But I will make the argument that ferries from England come to the island through Brendam Docks, while international shipping goes to Knapford Harbor that has the larger berths for vessels to dock in. But with that in mind, joining Edward on his branch line would be James. Now, I choose James to be with Edward on this branch line instead of Boko. It really comes from a fan-made episode called Being James, created by Thomas Fan 2002. And the best way I describe it is James's character has a great conclusion to his story arc of accepting the fact that he's not really a mainline engine, but that he's more of a branch line engine, and that is okay. So the idea of Edward and James working together on the branch line just seemed to fit perfectly in my mind. The goods and passenger work would be shared between the two of them as they're both mixed traffic engines, and if they need to take on longer trains, they can easily double head them. Now, at Brendam Docks itself, we're going to have Salty. Salty is a perfect dockyard diesel, which again is perfect for not only in the series and in universe, but also works well here in my canonization. Joining him, we have our next CGI character, which is Porter. Again, I think he fits perfectly into the Thomas and Friends universe, and it would make as another shunter to help with setting up the trains for Edward and James. Now, I will say there's not going to be as many passenger trains along the Brendam branch, but it would make some sense that they only need 2 main engines. And one more character that I would add, and I know this isn't a locomotive, but I still think would work well, is Old Slow Coach, being on this branch line. She would be used for special trains going from Wellsworth to the Vicarage Orchard as a kind of Sunday special service or a special attraction. And again, this comes from another fan-made episode, but of course, if Brendam Docks gets too busy, we can move some of the other trains can come in and help line the burden, especially with Boko or Henry, even the Scottish twins if the need arises. But again, this is going to be specifically James and Edward's branch line, and this is their designated area. Now we're going to move on to Kildane. Now, Kildane is a place we don't really get to see in much of the series. It's supposed to be the island's largest city, according to the Island of Sodor book, and has the most industry. Connecting at Kildane is the Pilgodrid branch, which carries electricity from the dams along the river, but also has an ironworks at the top of the island. We also see that it is a private industrial line connecting to the cement works. I would say the cement works is most likely where Fergus the traction engine lives, as he is a privately owned vehicle delivering the cement to Kildane or taking stone or whatever material needed to grind up the cement for the plant. Also, I would say here is where Jack and the Pack live, as the main center of Sodor's construction company under Miss Jenny. I would also put Harvey here, as well as the breakdown cranes and Rocky the crane. I thought about it, and I like the idea of a search and rescue center. It does make a lot of sense, but I don't like it how it was made in the Misty Island movie, as it just seemed rather dumb having it off to the side rather in a centralized location. But having the equipment needed to handle any accidents or breakdowns along the main line, it would be best suited to have it there when the need arises. Going north along the Pilgodrid line, the book talks about that this branch line is completely electrified and it has its own fleet of electric engines, bringing down trains from the aluminum works at Pilgodrid town. But in the TV series, we don't see any electrified lines, and instead of a aluminum works, we see an ironworks, where we have Airy and Bert. The ironworks, or as the other engines would call it, the scrapyard, is probably where the most of the scrap trains and scrap metal from the island or even the mainland get delivered there, so they're broken up and turned into new metal. So I don't think many engines would like to go up there, but I did think some characters that would work well here. First would be Neville. Now, regrettably, Neville was cast a bad hand from the TV series as just another one-off character with no real substance to work with. But I really do like the class of engines that they gave him, a Q1 Southern locomotive, which is an absolute beast when it comes to freight trains. So I want to give him a fair chance and make him the designated engine to run the branch line, bringing down fresh steel from the ironworks down to Kildane, which can be attached to other trains. Then he can take up the scrap trains up to the ironworks so Airy and Bert can sort them out. Joining Neville on the branch line would be Derek the Diesel and Paxton the Diesel Shunter. Derek again was one of the one-off characters from Season 5 as a Clayton Class 17 diesel. For myself, I think he would be a good engine to take the more light trains up the line, then come down the gradient with the heavier trains, so it's not too much strain on his engine. And Paxton would be the designated shunter at Kildane Station, taking care of the trains coming in and out and whatever needs to be sorted for other goods to be set aside for future shipments or to arrange passengers if needed. Further down the line, we come to the Kirk Ronan branch line. Now, Kirk Ronan in the book talks about it's a vacation holiday town, most likely sees most of its traffic during the summer seasons. It is also the place where Gordon had his famous crash in Better View for Gordon. But this branch line, I figured it would be separate and not used very often. If it's closed during the winter seasons, we would only have a few trains going to it. So for myself, I think only 2 engines are needed to do the work on this branch line. First, to work the passenger services would be Molly, again another one-off character that did not give much screen time for, but I do like the design of her being a former express engine prior to Great Britain switching over to Pacific type locomotives. So giving her a new sense of fulfillment, she would run the passenger trains during the summer from maybe Vickerstown all the way to Kirk Ronan. Joining her on this branch line to handle the light goods would be Dennis. Again, another one-off character, but the concept of Dennis being a lazy diesel was kind of interesting. So he would handle most of the light goods coming down the line from Kelsthorpe Road and dropping them off along the line, but also making small deliveries from Mr. Jolly's chocolate factory. Which again, an easy enough job, not too much for a rather lackadaisical diesel. And the branch line most likely would be closed off during the winter, and the two engines can be reassigned to different parts of the island wherever the help is needed. Little ways away, we now have the final branch line, the Great Waterton branch, along with the narrow gauge line, as they're all connected at Crovan's Gate. Nothing would change too much from the TV series except probably some locations for some of the engines, but we can have some characters reside at Crovan's Gate. First is our next CGI characters, Kevin and Victor. The Sodor Steamworks is a great location and the primary workshop for the engines of Sodor to get repairs and overhauls if needed. And I would like to keep these two characters from the CGI series as they're very consistent as a mentor and an apprentice figures. So they would work out great along the narrow gauge line, so Victor could easily go up the narrow gauge line to rescue engines if needed, as he himself is a narrow gauge locomotive. For the Great Waterton branch, for myself, I would assign Stanley to run this line, but again, it is more of a historical and vacation site as it's not completely restored to its original glory. It's not opening up all the old mines, as it was implied as an old mining town, but it is still a great location for visitors to come and see. With Stanley, we also have Flora, the tram engine. This works out well because, again, the branch line is not heavily re-industrialized, but just more as a tourist attraction, so there wouldn't be too much traffic going between Crovan's Gate and Great Waterton. Stanley's main role is to work on the branch line, but also doing the shunting at the transfer yards, as well as Crovan's Gate station. This makes him very versatile at what he can do, but he's constantly busy at one of the most important stations on the island. For the narrow gauge engines, the ones living at the shed near Crovan's Gate would be Duke, Duncan, Peter Sam, Sir Handel, Renius, and Scarloey. But the other two, Mighty and Mac, along with Freddy, would live up the line near the slate quarry, or slate mines, being the stronger engines and more capable of working in the mines themselves. Not to mention, it would be easier to take trains down the line where the other engines are being assigned their jobs. Finally, we have reached the end of the main line at Vickerstown. The main line Eastern will have its own roundhouse and turntable, where the rest of the main line engines will sleep, taking whatever trains come from the other railway and taking them west towards the other end of the island at Knapford. Now here is another controversial take, but our first engine will be the Class 40 diesel. It would be a good addition, taking the larger trains coming from the mainland throughout the rest of the island, but I would still keep him as a mixed traffic locomotive, kind of like Boko. The Premier Express engine coming from the east will be our final CGI character, which is Rebecca. Rebecca, being an express engine, works within the series, though I think her character wasn't properly introduced, so everyone has a lot of mixed feelings about her. But I like her concept as a West Country class locomotive from the Southern Railway, taking the express from the eastern part of the island all the way down to Knapford on the other side. Our designated goods engine will be Murdoch, a powerful 9F locomotive, easily can pull any of the largest goods and freight trains that would come from the mainland. As for our two shunters, in this part of the island we will have Rosie and Diesel. I would say that most of the engines still would have some gripe about Diesel, especially with all the tricks and devious plots that he's pulled over the years. So moving him away from the rest of the steam engines would probably be the best, so there's no animosity between everyone. But I think Rosie would be there to properly guide Diesel, as she is very much a no-nonsense character that we get to see later on in the TV series. Since we have the Bluebell branch line, we might as well include Stepney, the Bluebell engine. He would run on the private line for holidaymakers coming from Ballyhoo all the way down to Norrumby, another holiday town that we see on the island. Since the line is so small, they don't really need any other engines for the line, but he can easily be lent out to help the other engine on the line when the need is called, or if the line is closed for repairs, he can still be really useful elsewhere. And that is that. My roster of Thomas and Friends characters on the island of Sodor. Do you agree with my choices? Do you think some of my choices were a little perplexing or even eye-opening? Either way, leave your comments down below and leave any other suggestions that you might have, whether it's where trains should be stationed or what kind of jobs they should be dealing with. Either way, I hope you enjoyed and had fun. I'll see you all in the next video.